Okay, so we have been spending the last couple sections working on how do we solve quadratic equations. We know how to solve equations. If we have an equation like this, 3x plus 4 equals 7, we know how to solve this. We subtract 4 from both sides and we get 3x equals 3. And then divide 3 on both sides and we're going to get x equals 1. And that's really no problem. But when we start getting into some other things, it's going to be more of a problem, because if we have a 3x squared minus 5x plus 8, if we want to solve that, well, now we have a problem, because we have an x squared and an x over here, and we can't combine them because they're not like terms, and so we really have a problem, because we have both the x squared and the x. All right, that is really what our problem is. X squared and x, and it's not going to work out very nice for us. So we had a couple different ways that we could solve these. We could solve it by graphing and see where it crossed the x-axis, and our answers were at those two spots. We could solve this by factoring, and I'm just going to make up some numbers. Say we had 2x minus 5 and x plus 3. And we would get this first answer right here as x equals negative 3. And we would get this second answer as x equals a positive 5 halves. And those would be our answers. Or we could use the quadratic formula. And then the nice thing about the quadratic formula was it is always going to work. It'll always tell you the right answer. And if we have a calculator, it's really pretty easy to plug that in. Negative v plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And we can use this anytime we have an x squared. So it's really a great tool to have. But what if there was a shorter way? What if there was a shorter way? Let's look at these problems. Now, on the left side, we've got x plus 1 squared equals 49. Now, first of all, let me show you a way, and I'll go through this pretty quick, but a way that might not be as good to do it, but it would certainly work. X plus 1 squared just means x plus 1 times x plus 1. And so we could FOIL this out. X squared plus x plus 1 equals 49. And then simplifying this side, x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 49. So all I did, I just squared that out. I FOILed it. So double distributive property. We got that. Now this has to be equal to 0, so we'd subtract the 49. And we'd get x squared plus 2x minus 48 is equal to 0. Now maybe we can factor this. Or maybe graph it, or we could for sure use the quadratic formula to solve this. But as you can see, we've already done a lot of work up here just to get to the point where we'd have to start the quadratic formula. So I wonder if there is a quicker way to do this. And in fact, there is. We're going to be able to solve this in just a couple steps. Here's what I see. I see over here that everything on this side, everything on the left side of the equation is being squared. Everything is being squared over there. So what if we would just get rid of that square first? What's the opposite of square? We always know that if you want to get rid of something in an equation, you have to do the opposite of it, and you have to do it to both sides. So if it says plus 7, you're going to have to subtract 7 from both sides. If it says 3 times x, then we're going to have to divide by 3 on both sides. And if it tells us to square something, we're going to have to do the opposite. The opposite of square is square root. So we're going to have to take the square root of both sides. Okay? Now maybe let me back up one thing real quick here. In general, not always, but in general, if there's an exponent, it's going to tell you how many answers there are going to be, okay? So right here we've got an exponent of 2. That means in general there's going to be 2 answers, and we have to look for those 2 answers, okay? So just remember that. Whatever the exponent is, the biggest exponent tells you in general how many answers we're going to have. Okay, so back to this. We want to get rid of this square. So the opposite of square is the square root on both sides. So on the left side, the square and the square root just cancel, and all we have is x plus 1 equals, and the square root of 49 is 7, okay? Now, that's only going to give us one answer, and remember that I said there was two answers. Well, it turns out that this could also be equal to negative 7. X plus 1 could be equal to negative 7. X plus 1 could be equal to positive 7 or negative 7. And let's just take a real quick look. I won't do this for all the problems, but just a real quick look. If x plus 1 was equal to 7, then 7 squared would be 49. Okay, so it could be equal to 7. But if x plus 1 was equal to negative 7, then negative 7 squared, negative 7 times negative 7, is still positive 49. So that's why x plus 1 could be equal to 7, or x plus 1 could be equal to negative 7. Let's go ahead and solve both of these. Subtract the 1, x equals negative 8. Come over here to the red one. Subtract the 1, x equals 6. So there we go. Two answers, and that was much, much easier than the last one, the last way that we did. That way got kind of crazy. Let's look at this one. So here's what I see on this one. Everything on that left side is being squared. So let's get rid of that square root since everything's being squared. Let's get rid of the square since everything's being squared. Let's square root both sides. So on the left, the square and the square root will just cancel, and we're just left with 3x plus 4 equals, the square root of 9 is 3. But remember, we need two answers there. So it could be not only 3, but it could be also negative 3. 3x plus 4 could be equal to negative 3. Since I got blue, we'll solve this first. Let's subtract the 4. We're going to get 3x equals negative 7. Divide by 3. X equals negative 7 thirds. Let's come back and find our other answer in the red. Subtract the 4. 3x equals negative 1. 3 minus 4 is negative 1. Divide by 3. X equals negative 1 third. So there we have our two answers right there. Okay, and we can do this because everything was being squared, so we can just take the square root of it and we're done. Okay, let's look at this next one. Now, this next one, we have a problem because on the left side, this is being squared, but this 4 is not. Okay, so it would be awesome if that 4 wasn't there, right? Like if everything on the left side was being squared, that'd be awesome, but we've got that 4 there. But no problem, we can make that 4 disappear. We know how to do that. Just subtract the 4 to the other side. So now I have 2x minus 5 squared is equal to 81. Okay, is it all right if I go back up and erase the top and just kind of change that up there? I think I'm going to, because we saw that when we subtract the 4, whoops, that didn't work very well. When we subtract the 4 over, this just became an 81. Okay, now let's work from there just to save some space. All right, so now everything on that left side is being squared. So let's square root it. Take the square root of both sides. The square and the square root will cancel. We've got 2x minus 5 equals, the square root of 81 is 9. Or remember, we need those two answers if there's an x squared in there. The other answer is going to be maybe 2x minus 5 could be equal to negative 9. So we've got a positive 9 and a negative 9. Okay, let's add the 5 over. 2x equals negative 4. Divide by 2. X equals negative 2. Let's go do the other one, the red one. Add the 5. 2x equals 14. Divide by 2. X equals 7. All right, so x equals 7. X equals negative 2. Let's look at this next one. I'm going to erase this just so that we get some more space to work. Okay, now I'm feeling good. All right, so everything on the left side is being squared. Okay, so let's take the square root of both sides. And the square root and the square will cancel. And on this, we're going to have, on the left side, 3x minus 5 equals, well, what's the square root of negative 9? The square root of negative 9 is going to be negative 3. Or we've got 3x minus 5 equals positive 3. Okay? And that seems like it's right. But it's actually not. I made a mistake in there. I wonder if you caught it. What's the square root of negative 9? I'm going to just use my calculator. I mean, it's obviously negative 3, but I just want to make sure. I just want to confirm that the square root of negative 9 is negative 3. And, uh-oh. See that? Math error. Because the truth is, you can't take the square root of a negative number. It doesn't work. We saw that before, remember? Because what's negative 3 times negative 3? That's going to be a positive 9. And if we take a positive 3 times a positive 3, that's also going to be a positive 9. So we can't square a number. We can't square a number and get a negative. If we're squaring something, it's always going to be positive. So this down here, we can't even do it. We can't take the square root of negative 9. This one has no solutions. All right, so watch out for that. That's definitely a tricky one, where if we are squaring something and we see that the answer is negative, it's going to be no solutions. All right. Well, let's work on this one. First of all, I see a couple things. First of all, I see that everything is square rooted. I like that. Everything on the left side is square rooted. Okay, now check the exponent. Now, this is tricky. You might say that there's not an exponent there. There actually is. Square root is an exponent. I could write this like this: 2x plus 5 to the 1/2 power. That means the exact same thing as the square root. Square root is the 1/2 power, okay? So if our exponent tells us how many answers there are, 1/2, it means there's a half an answer. And how can we have half an answer? Well, we can't, but this is what that means. It means sometimes there will be an answer and sometimes there won't. Half the time we have an answer, half the time we don't, okay? And all of these problems that I'm going to show you today will have an answer, but just know if we have a square root in a problem like this, sometimes there's not going to be an answer. Okay, well, let's go ahead and solve this. Everything on the left side is being square rooted, right? And I want to get rid of that square root. So what's the opposite of square root? Well, the opposite of square root is square. So we're going to square both sides. So the square and square root cancel. I've just got 2x plus 5 equals 8 squared is going to be 64. Now, do I need to bring this over here and also make it equal to negative 64? No, I don't. Why? Because we only have one answer, and sometimes not even that. We don't need two answers. That's an easy way to remember it. But another way is if we have a square root over here, we're never going to have a negative answer. Square roots are always going to be positive because of what we said just a couple minutes ago on that last slide. All right, so let's go ahead and solve this. We squared both sides. Squared it. Okay, let's subtract the 5. 2x equals 59 and divide by 2. X is just going to be equal to 59 over 2. 59 halves. Okay, let's look at the next one. Next one. Well, the bad news is that not everything is being square rooted, so we can't just square it right now. That's not going to come out. But the good thing is we know how to get rid of that 5. Let's just subtract the 5 to the other side. So when I subtract the 5 from the 9, that's going to be a 4. Let me go back and do that again. We're just going to take the 5 and subtract it over here. So 9 minus 5 is just going to be 4. So we're just going to subtract the 5 over. Now, everything on the left side is square rooted. Now, let's go ahead and square both sides. So the square and square root will cancel, and I've got 3x minus 4 equals 16. Again, I only have half an answer here. So I don't need another negative 16. I've only got one, sometimes not even that. Add the 4 over, 3x equals 20. Divide by 3, x equals 20 over 3. All right, let's look at this next one. Next one. First of all, everything's square rooted. I love that. Next thing, the exponent's 1/2. So there's going to be, sometimes there's going to be one answer and sometimes not. So maybe we have an answer, maybe we don't. Okay, so let's go ahead and square this. And square and square root will cancel. On the left side, we've just got 7x plus 4. On the right side, negative 12 squared is going to be positive 144. Let's subtract the 4. 7x equals 140. Divide by 7, x equals 20. Now let's just for fun go ahead and check this out. So let's put 20 back in for x. Let's substitute that in right there. And using my calculator, when I do that, the square root of 7 times 20 plus 4, that actually is going to give me an answer of a positive 12. Positive 12. So what does that mean? That's definitely not negative 12, because remember, anytime we have a square root, it's going to be a positive. So I actually could have seen this back from the beginning right here. If I have a square root and it says it's a negative, that's going to be a no way. That is no solution. So if the square root is negative, it's going to be no solutions. Let's look at this next one. 5x plus 6, square root of 5x plus 6 minus 8 equals negative 3. And we would be tempted to say I see a square root and a negative, so it's going to be no solutions. Maybe. Let's see, because we got to get that square root by itself. So let's take this negative 8 and let's add it over here. So plus 8. Okay, so what's that going to be? What's negative 3 plus 8? Negative 3 plus 8 is a positive 5. Okay, so now we see that this is actually positive, so we are going to have to go ahead and work it out. So we've got the square root, so it's going to be 1, maybe none, half. We've got half an answer. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Square both sides. Square root and square will cancel. 5x plus 6 equals 25. Let's subtract the 6. 5x equals 19. And divide by 5. X equals 19 over 5. One more quick way to do this, and let's see. We could, this one, since there's an x squared and an x here, again, we can't solve this. We'd have to use a quadratic formula or graphing, or maybe this is a pretty easy one to factor. Multiplies to get 12 and subtracts to get 4. That's going to be 6 and 2. Remember, bigger number always gets the first sign, so plus 6. And if this is a minus, then these two signs have to be opposite. So right here I can see my first answer is just going to be a negative 6, and my second answer is going to be a positive 2. All right, so if we can factor it, that's quick and easy. Now let's look at one last problem. Here's what I see on this problem. Both everything on the left side has an x in it, which means I can factor out an x. The greatest common factor here is an x. So if I take an x out of the x squared, that's just going to be an x. If I factor out the x from the 7x, that's just going to be x minus 7 equals 0. So setting both of these equal to 0, x equals 0, x minus 7 equals 0. So x equals 0, that's an answer right there. This side, just add the 7 over, and x equals 7. That's the second answer. The x squared says we need 2 answers, and we've got our 2 answers. Okay? So that's it. I know I showed you a lot of stuff, but if you get this, this can really save you a lot of time and really pretty easy to do. Good luck.